Discs. The minimal storage of the future since 1982. I found it appropriate to mention that I decided to start writing this around the same time that Best Buy announced that they would no longer sell physical DVDs and Blu-ray discs. It's the end of an era. Although it is amazing that CDs and even vinyl records still exist if you want a physical version of your music or other audio content. Technology has gone through many changes in the last 20 years, let alone the last 40. And we're still rocking these bad boys. Once they're made by the manufacturer, they can't be patched or updated with another version. They usually just repress it and send it out in remaster waves, or whatever they decide to call it. I touched on this briefly when I made my video on Bionicle the game. The game has, and always will have existed as originally released. There are no balance patches, no bug fixes, nothing. And that's something the entertainment industry is still very wishy-washy on their willingness to keep. Some companies will release a game and make tweaks, big or small, after they release it to keep as much as they can of the original release. And some companies will just reskin a game, call it the sequel, and bar any people from playing the predecessor ever again. Thanks, Blizzard! With movies, optical discs had quite the battle to decide which one would come out on top to replace the VHS. Laserdiscs came out within the same lifespan of VHS, but DVDs rose to prominence around 1999.
This is DVD.
Then Microsoft tried to push the HD DVD in the mid-2000s before the Blu-ray came in and politely asked them to leave and never come back. And finally, to compete with digital streaming, the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray disc appears to be the final form of physical video media for the foreseeable future. And filmmakers even urge consumers to buy the physical version of movies on discs. That way, you can have access to it regardless of whatever company hosting your digital copies potentially disappearing as late-stage capitalism slowly melts away at its own infrastructure. I find that to be a pretty valid point because before the big digital streaming companies we have now, it was quite the Wild West while they fought the war for digital movie lockers. At first, it was kept fairly simple with just standard digital copy. There was no obligation to one service until after the digital copy was claimed. That way you could take your MP4 and slap it into whatever player you had and it would be saved forever. It was simple, until the same problem arose that always does, where companies want to make their own locker to take in the royalties, but they don't guarantee that it'll work or that it will last forever. Which is why I have some beef with Warner Bros. Ultraviolet because my digital copies from my sealed Blu-ray set of the Dark Knight trilogy in 2012 had bad codes, and Ultraviolet evaporated before I could redeem them properly. If anyone from Warner Bros. Is seeing this is your fault. As a 90s child, discs played a big part in how I was exposed to the world. One of the ways I learned how to read was with the living books that had interactive games within the books I grew up reading normally. When I got tired of flipping through physical pages like a normal person, I would pop in these discs and start playing. The Let Me Play option on those gave you plenty of little games to mess with on each section of the storybooks to spice up the experience. The most core memories I have from this time were burning multiple copies of Warcraft 3, The Game of Life, or The Sims 2 onto CDs so I could play on a LAN with my friends and family. And for legal purposes, those definitely never left my house. Since Bionicle is a toy line from the 2000s, LEGO tapped into the digital media realm in more than just console games. However, much like Dr. Evil, they went for the Mini-Me, the mini CD-ROM. If you played the GameCube, you're very familiar with these little guys. 256 megabyte discs that either held the cereal box fodder, or some of the best video games ever made. Like I said last year, the only copy of Bionicle the game I owned at the time was one of these discs for the GameCube. For Bionicle, the mini CDs were a way to push additional story and marketing when buying the canister sets from 2001 to 2004. It wasn't every canister set, but the canister labeling and the contents of the disc itself made it feel so exclusive. The ones from the Motunui era were essentially just glorified product plugs for what you just bought. Look at these models that glow when you hover the mouse over them. You can even freely move this 3D render of the set you literally just bought in this engine.
Meat!
The biggest highlight of these discs was the voice work and the narration of nearly every button click. They seriously bring it up to 11 whenever they deliver any line.
Levac Carl's tool is a vacuum shield. This symbol represents the elemental power of air.
Motunui was once an island paradise.
Welcome to Motunui. Times are dark.
Too bad. Try again.
Here you can exit the application or visit the Bionicle universe on bionicle.com.
There was some serious dedication in pushing these little vignettes in the promotional CDs. Since it was a little more expensive to export these separate canisters into the United States, they would keep them in the European countries in later years where they'd be a little more local to Denmark. To correspond with the collectible gimmick of 2004, LEGO pushed the Koka Club. Bionicle.com allowed you to redeem fun little rewards from the paper cards inside the canisters, or from the codes on the boxes of the sets in between. It was a pretty ingenious idea. Even after they changed gimmicks from the Koka discs in 2005, they kept the name Koka Club up until 2008, and then they changed it to simply BioCode. The codes unlocked flash games, icons, animations, pictures of prototypes, or promotional videos. It was cool stuff that's all stored away in the BIONICLE Media Project. The stuff that you would unlock in these collectibles are not that impressive compared to what you can get as rewards today. I mostly bring that up so that people that are not that familiar with this don't have their expectations too high. Since the highest download speeds in 2004 were still in kilobits per second, oh my god. The stuff you were earning as Koka Club rewards had to be something that wouldn't take an entire day to download. Of all the things that came from the site, what stole the show for me were the Toa Metru games. Each of the Toa Metru had their own interactive page-scrolling game on the CDs. These piqued my interest because it was like those living books, but for my fandom. According to the README notes on the disc images, these individual CDs are apparently credited as BIONICLE CD-ROM, Mysteries of Metru Nui. You would play as the Toa Metru as they'd investigate their respective districts of Metru Nui to find their missing Matoran, learn about the Great Discs, and how they will destroy the Morbuzak. It was essentially this giant plant monster. You never actually found the Great Discs in the game itself, but you would play detective and solve essentially the same puzzle every time. Which brings me to my next point. I considered playing through each of them in this video and showing you the details of each one, but they are incredibly repetitive. And it's not justified to make a video as long as a retrospective for a console video game for these 6 mini CDs. Even playing more modern games like Tears of the Kingdom gave me flashbacks to what it was like to experience different but the same sentences over and over.
Demon King.
The Demon King.
Demon King is
It was the Demon King.
my secret stone.
Secret stone.
That stone that you are wearing. Secret stone? Demon King?
Demon King? Secret Stone?
But the variety worsens on the CDs since the narrator is the same across all 6 discs.
Toa Metru is protector of God Metru, of dangerous plants, of Metru must find Toa incredibly powerful, they wish to stay their home, but the only Toa where the discs be found have disappeared as well. Help Toa Metru search for the missing dimensional Toa so that she can find the great disc. Click the forward star to start. If at any point you want to return to this screen, click the button below. You can monitor your progress as well.
You see what I mean? Not to say that it's bad voice work, don't get me wrong. Like I said, these guys crank it to 11 every time. But it starts to grate on you when you can't skip most of it. I can see to some degree why they would do this. It's simple and makes the experience pretty much the same in case you couldn't get all 6 Toa and by extension all 6 games. But at the same time, for tryhards like me, it leaves little to the imagination. So let's talk about what they all accomplish. The Great Discs, which are needed for pretty much the entire story of 2004, need to be found. So each Toa Metru is conveniently kind of good friends with each of the Matoran that know where the discs are. This entire subplot is one of my favorite arcs in the entirety of BIONICLE. I read through most of it in the comics, and it was great to see the dynamic the Matoran had with the Toa Metru, either from being just along for the ride or Onawa genuinely hoping Akmu dies while they venture together. It's not the most fleshed out, but the general pettiness that they all feel toward the Toa Metru is great, and there are some twists to how they express their pettiness. Going as far as even setting up that Akmu is intentionally sabotaging because he's working for the secret cops, calling back to him being the saboteur from the Matanui online game, which goes to show that even in the prequel, Akmu is still a little shit. Sometimes I write these and then I forget that I say these things in them. In almost every scenario, you start in the Matoran's house, check their place of work, find clues of why they wouldn't be at either, and the promo videos of each Toa are cut into this to show them looking for the Matoran. You make your way to the Matoran, save them from rubble. A couple of them like Onawa and Nuju have more steps involved after you save them to add a few more details, and then it's over. But don't worry, your effort doesn't go unnoticed.
Good work. You've completed your mission.
So now this begs the question, why did I pick these games? Well, as I mentioned closer to the beginning, they were pretty ambitious when it came to their distribution. The multiple versions that they released of this game are a pretty good testament to their conservation of digital storage. Growing up, I only had the Koka Club versions that were the versions from the card codes. The digital release conserved download times by compressing assets like character animations that would leave it up to just still images, or just completely removing characters and objects from the scenery. There were a few things that stood out in the digital version when I went back to play these, like this animation in the Nuju game, and when I saw it I remember thinking, man, where are more animations like this? Little did I know that the physical version would have that and oh so much more.
Okay. And then I look up.
Onua spots the name and number of a Pometru shoot station carved into the rock. But while he is looking at this, Akmu disappears again.
These were definitely the most interactive of the mini CDs. The different environments had clues in them that were required to find before moving on to the next page. And I cannot stress enough how many 3x3 slide puzzles are in these games. When you're not playing the occasional matching or Simon Says type games, you can play anywhere between 1 to 3 slide puzzles per disc. They're repetitive, but I still had some fun playing with them, even if some of them took an agonizing amount of time.
Oh my gosh. This is agony.
The mini CDs and the Koka Club in general were a really cool approach to introducing the youth gradually to the ever-changing technology of the 2000s, while still making it fun and user-friendly. I had quite a lot of base-level desktop computer experience from having a family PC growing up, and I remember these being very straightforward back in the day. There have definitely been times where LEGO is discreet and private about their own business practices. Being privately owned, they're obviously within their rights to do that, but the Koka Club is another example to me of what they never are shy on, and that's their creativity. They will always wear this on their sleeve. The fact that the unlockable items within the Koka Club included items like stills of prototype sets or promotional flash animations is showing all the different ways their staff coordinate their creativity. That's why I personally feel they don't worry too much about the leaks that appear with any waves they release throughout a year. There's that fascination and that desire to know what's coming next, to see how they're continually creating. But there's just something about this time period and their optimization of digital and physical media when selling their products. It's truly a testament to the team as they integrated physical toys into what they knew would become a digital world. I'm just nostalgic about these discs, what can I say? Would I recommend these games? Probably not, unless you're a newcomer and you've read literally everything else and you are just begging for more of this universe. Everything you get in here can be read from a book or from a comic, but it was nice to look back on them, and it reminded me of why I love this series. And like always, they're accessible at biomediaproject.com. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. It wasn't quite as long of a video this time around. That was mostly for my sake, so I could just have a bit of a breather and not crank out an hour-long video every year for this event. I'm hoping to make more content in between these Bionicle days. I just need to find the time and the ability to do that. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like what you saw here, then I would love if you would hop to my actual channel, the BIONICLE Collective, and give that some love. Be sure to like and comment and subscribe. And everybody else, I will see you next year.